College football week 5, and it's that time of the week again when we get a special free pick and analysis from Steve from collegefootballwinning.com. Of course, these free picks that Steve has graced us with have gone 11-2 against the spread over last year and this year. And of course, Steve has a great long-term record of success at his website, so it's always interesting to hear what he has to say. And this week, he's chosen an interesting game, Minnesota at Northwestern. This game has a very low total. It's a 39.5, 40, or 40.5 market wide. So expect to be very low scoring, and the line has taken a somewhat significant movement since it opened at about 6.5. Now it's down to 3.5 or 4 market wide. Minnesota, the road underdog here. Steve from collegefootballwinning.com. This is an interesting game that you've chosen to discuss this week. Tell us why and what side you're looking to maybe bet here.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Yes, short line, very understandable here. Just looking at Minnesota, of Minnesota's 4 games they've played so far this year, 3 of them, the last 3 actually, have been decided by 3 points. And the first game this year was decided by 6 points, and that was against, normally high-powered TCU. And now looking at Northwestern, head coach Pat Fitzgerald, 5 of his 8 times playing Minnesota have been decided by 7 points or less. So the short line makes a lot of sense right here. Now, you know we're a company that blends our betting data analysis with football performance data analysis. So looking at some football performance, Northwestern, so far this season, up until last game, had been blessed with good health. Now, that's no longer really the case. Last week with Ball State, they had about half a dozen injuries. So now they're dealing with injuries to important figures like starting safety Godwin Igwebuike, backup to him and nickelback Kyle Cairo. Both those guys are 2 of the members of their vaunted so-called Sky team, which has been impressive. And then they have their starting left tackle Jeff Mogus. He was taken off the field last week, and he is certainly questionable here. Most experienced offensive lineman. Now, for Minnesota, I think just last game, they figured out that they have more depth in a possible star at running back in true freshman Shannon Brooks, who had a breakout game last week. We look for him to continue that streak this week and get a lot more carries. Now, looking at the spread, of course, getting back to that betting data analysis, Minnesota head coach Jerry Kelly, 6-2 against the spread in Big Ten road games last 2 seasons. So this is the Big Ten opener for both of these teams. Head coach Pat Fitzgerald from Northwestern, his Wildcats, they're just 2-5-1 against the spread versus Minnesota. And that includes going 0-3-1 against the spread versus Minnesota when they're playing in Evanston, like this game. They've failed to cover the spread against Minnesota in Evanston the 4 times they've played under Pat Fitzgerald by an average of 8.25 points per game. And speaking of that, Northwestern really has no home field advantage under head coach Pat Fitzgerald. Northwestern is 39.66% against the spread at home for all games under Pat Fitzgerald. Their average margin of victory against the spread at home under Pat Fitzgerald is negative 2.94. So it's almost negative a field goal. So that means there goes your home field advantage. Now, because Northwestern is on the quarter system academically, their classes just started this week. So what's the big deal about that? That means up to this point in the season, those football players, especially the young ones like their redshirt freshman starting quarterback, they had the luxury of playing academics-free or classes-free football. That changed just this week. Not so for Minnesota. They're on a traditional semester system. So they started first week in September for classes, so they've been dealing with that. So my conclusion right now, Peter, is as of right now, and this can change because we're 2 days ahead, and especially with certain injury reports that we're waiting on, particularly from Northwestern, I like Minnesota getting 4 or 4.5 points in this game.
Classic, thorough analysis by Steve from collegefootballwinning.com. Right now, the line is split market-wide, 3.5 or 4. So for the purpose of our record keeping, we can give you 4 for your free play in our video this week. And Steve, your premium picks go at your website every week. Tell us all about that.
What's really exciting right now, Peter, is this is the first week that it appears that we're going to be releasing our formula betting recommendations for the first time this season. So if anyone's watched these videos before, or if you haven't, we're a company that is based on making betting recommendations in just college football algorithmically. Those algorithmic betting recommendations we call our formula. We need to get sufficient data each season before we can release those formula betting recommendations. We now believe we have that. So going into week 5 here, this will be the first time we release our formula this season. That formula lifetime, Peter, is 62.75% against the spread. In case you're wondering how we were doing in the lead up to the formula so far this season, we're 62.79% against the spread. All of our betting recommendations, including the free betting recommendations, so far this season. So go to collegefootballwinning.com, put in coupon code SBR10, that's SBR10. Get 10% off of any membership that we're currently offering. And if you did that now, if you did that this week, you wouldn't miss a single formula betting recommendation for this entire season.
Sounds great, Steve. Thanks so much for your thoughts. Once again, talk to you next week.
Thank you, Peter.